So welcome again, everybody. My name is Janet Naklia. I'm a programs manager for Alberta Recreation and Parks Association. You are here with us today as part of an online programming series we're running in conjunction with our Okotoks Indigenous River Camp series. Originally, this was an event that happened on the land with youth in the Treaty 7 area. It was something that the elders themselves wanted to go forward with in terms of a project with connecting youth and culture. But because of COVID, things have changed. We all are under that weird pandemic set of rules. So luckily, we've received some funding to do these series instead. So we now have an opportunity to sit with elders from across the province and share their knowledge and their thoughts in terms of the revitalization of their culture, things they're moving forward with as elders, and how that applies to our contemporary lives today. So I'm very excited to welcome you to A View from the North. We have two Dene elders. They're both in the Cold Lake First Nation area, so they're literally calling in from the north. I should acknowledge that I myself am in Treaty 7 here in Mohkinstsis with the Blackfoot called Calgary. So I would like to acknowledge the land that I'm on, because I know our two elders will talk in a very beautiful way about their connections to the land and how that has shaped their identity. And so I want to respect that. And for all those First Nation people and allies like ourselves who are on this land where others have been since time immemorial. So I wanted to say that. And then I want to start off in a good way. So I do want to offer tobacco to you, Violet and Connie, for your amazing teachings that are happening today. And so thank you for that. I could pass this on to you in person, or would you like me to offer some tobacco to the land after today's session? Do you have a preference?
After.
So offer to the land after?
Yes.
Okay, so I will do that. It's a good protocol as we move forward. And so also then I invite you, did you want to do a prayer? And I have a smudge ready if you want to do a smudge. And that's an option to you, or we could just continue on with the webinar. What would you prefer?
Would you like me to?
Well,
would you like me to?
Yeah, well, it's all up to you. I think it'd be a good thing to do, but also I also want to respect what you want to do.
Violet.
Or do you want to Connie?
Well, you go ahead.
Okay.
So welcome back. Thank you, everyone. Those who are with us afterwards, as this is a recording, we just had a beautiful blessing from Elder Violet March. And so I just want to thank you, Violet. That was very lovely. It was very beautiful, especially hearing it in your language, because I know how important that is to both you and Elder Connie. So I would like to officially welcome Elder Violet March and Connie Santos to this webinar today. I will turn it over to them because I know they have an amazing program for us all ready to go. And for those who are just joining us, also what background you see with Elder Violet's background is actually the Cold Lake. So that's Cold Lake behind her. And so she is with us today literally with the land that she is actually on today. So I'll turn it over to you. And if there's any questions, I will keep an eye on the chat room and I'll let you know if there's any questions that come up. So thank you so much, and I'm excited for today. So over to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Connie Santos. Dene Suline John Kluichotwe Hotsin Ninia. I am from the traditional territory of the Dene Suline from the Cold Lake area. And actually our people came from the Primrose Lake, Cold Lake area. And a lot of our territory is actually in Saskatchewan. And today what we wanted to do was we wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of what it was like for people who lived up in our traditional territory. Before we go there, one of the things that I wanted to mention was that in 1952, there was a lot of changes for our people here in the territory. And one of the things that happened was that the military formed the Cold Lake Air Weapons range, and they took control of the majority of our territory. And what happened was that we were, our people had cabins, had different camps in different areas around the lake and in the territory. They had trap lines, and we were, the group of people in all of those areas were forced to relocate as a result of the military taking over those traditional grounds. And once our people were relocated, they had a very short period of time in order to pack their gear and all of their belongings and move out of that territory. And so it has been a very traumatic event for our people, because we actually migrated from like north of Primrose Lake all the way down to southern part of Cold Lake, which that area probably a few hundred kilometers anyway. And so our people migrated back and forth. So they stayed up in the Primrose Lake area in the winter time. So they would leave in the fall and they'd go back up to the territory, where they actually had cabins in different locations, and remained there until spring came. And then when spring came, they packed up and they moved south. And so part of it was while they were there in the wintertime, was for hunting and trapping, and that's what they did over the winter. So they would build up their stocks of fur, and in the springtime when they would come, they would sell their furs. And there was a lot of information that wasn't really transpired to the people. So a lot of people didn't really understand why they were being, they couldn't go back to their homeland the next spring, things like that. And just losing their livelihood up there caused a lot of social issues for the people when they had to be in a more contained area. So when they were moved to the area now known as Cold Lake First Nations 149A, 149B, and 149C, which is all located around the Cold Lake, the city of Cold Lake, there was a lot of adaptation that they had to do. And one of the things they had to do was they had to learn to farm. And, from being hunters and trappers, gatherers, that kind of, trades, loggers, things like that, to go into the farming. Took some time to learn the skills and things like that. So that was one of the things that happened. But as in the process as well, was we lost a lot of our traditional ways. So a lot of our customs, our traditions, all of those things started to change. And it was also during that time where the children were also being removed and put into residential school. And my dear relative Vi, she was one of those young people that were born and raised up in the trap line, and then during the time of relocation, they were taken off to residential school. And today, what we'd like to share is a little bit about Vi's story, about how that happened, and how we're slowly recovering and restoring some of our traditions and some of our teachings. And so that's kind of how we got going today, and what we have to offer. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Vi, and maybe she can introduce herself. And we have a little bit of a video, and I'm hoping to be able to play it so you'll get to hear from her what she actually had gone through. So I'll turn it over to Vi right now.
The background that you're looking at right now is awesome, awesome. That is my true grassroots, where it's beautiful. As you can see, the water is crystal clear. When you go to the far right-hand side, left-hand side, way out there, you can see we have miles and miles and miles of sandy beach. When I was a young girl, we lived practically in the water all summer. There was no TV, no cell phones, no electricity, none of that stuff. We lived right on the land in the water 24/7, it seems like. From the time we got up in the morning till late in the evening. The water is so awesome, and this is where we have, in our diet, we eat a lot of fish, and you have the most tasteful fish, I swear, in this whole wide world. Very tasty. We have different kinds of fish, like whitefish is very popular, and pickerel. Pickerel is way much more tastier than lobster. Yeah, so this is, like I say, it's a very popular area, especially in the summertime. Many people from different reserves come and gather here, and yeah, it's just great. Like, yeah. Nahudari, see Dene Asti. Denisohline's perspective on what is happening, this isolation that is taking place right now, what they call a COVID-19. From my way of thinking, Indigenous people, First Nation, it's restoring. Mother Earth is restoring itself. It's balancing with the animals, and it's basically, there's a time for everything, meaning like what is happening, like there is no different. I have never experienced anything like this in my whole entire life. Never did I ever dream of something happening like this, where we can go out and, the freedom of family, the freedom of going to sea. My people up north. There's that interaction of, like I had told you my story earlier, being on the trap line. We went with the season. We went with the animals, when to hunt and when not to hunt. But this thing that is happening is just out of this world. How do we react to something like this? It's the opposite from all my teachings. It is like, it's isolation. So this goes against everything I thought I would come that I could count on. Like, for instance, all the support. I knew where to go for help. And with family, people I lean on, people with my friends. And we're all going against the grain right now. No, you gotta isolate yourself. It's just so bizarre. But I remember, ya niso salotina, ashnati adu, the elder had said, there's going to come a time when you're going to not be able to go and visit your family, your friends, your parents, where you're going to be totally by yourself. In my mind, I thought, are you serious? What planet are you from? Me not go and visit my family? I don't think that's ever going to happen. Well, you know what? It's happening right now. And, you know, for so long that I lived in Calgary, like I said, I could not see the mountains. You know, when I go power walking and I'm standing on the hill overlooking the city, there's always a heavy cloud hanging over. Now it's crystal clear. I can hear the birds. There's no traffic. I can hear the river. Oh, it just kind of reminds me, like back at on the trap line, where it was so fresh, where we depended again on Mother Earth. Right now, with all the chaos and the noise and the traffic, Mother Earth is breathing finally. Let her rest for a while. It's too much that we've been abusing her. Garbage and pollution. And you know what, the other day, I was listening to the news. Oh, I was so happy because it said something about the whales. You know, there's not all that ocean noise and stuff. The boats and the motors and the planes and stuff. The whales are able to hear each other now. I thought, oh, how lovely, how lovely. A miracle again. Masini for the fish and for the animals. I'm just so very grateful. Again, we had been warned when I was a child that this is what's going to happen. And sure enough, you know, again, reality hit, and how we see Dene equi, Nethi. How am I handling it? Do you know what? I'm handling it darn good, actually, because I've lived that era of depending only on Mother Earth. So yes, it's horrible virus happening, but goodness is coming out of it. And the goodness is to respect Mother Earth and to have patience. And it's family unity. I mean, my son who's with me, praise the Lord, I've never sat down and played Scrabble with him before because there was no time. Work. You're just in all kinds of directions. And now it's family unity that is happening out there. The daily picnics we go on, still in isolation, being very respectful, but still it's actually quiet and being kind to each other, and the silence. We dash dohon etijana hovithera. Eyit asi sas und ila ola. What here sits yeta. Masines Bensi Atlovisne. So, you know, I'm just very, very grateful that the Great Spirit, the Great One, is looking after all of us right now and will continue to do so. So, you know, with that, you know, I'm just, you know, I'm just letting all that anxiety and all that stress calm down, breathe, and let your spirit speak with you. You can hear your spirit. Thank you. See, Nethy, my work right now takes me to helping people, you know, that are less fortunate than we are, and trying to help them move forward. But at this point in time, technology kicks in. How I communicate with people out there, with clients, is on the telephone, on the laptop, on a 55-inch screen, on a cell phone, you know, and it's basically continuing to support. For instance, a young gentleman phoned me earlier today just to say hi, you know, and it's one of the clients. How are you doing? Vice versa, and I've asked him, how are you coping with this? I'm okay. Kunen, like, how about you? Well, we're just coping as best as we can. And like I say, I'm able to see some of them when I'm asked, when one of the girls will join me with the clients. So we continue to smudge together, to share with each other, to encourage each other. Life goes on like it did before. But sometimes, you know, we're so much against this technology, Facebook, too much. But I'm grateful that I'm able to speak at Oyastri live. I could, wow, this is great. Where, again, like I said, I thought it was a bit too much. And I'm able to continue, you know, just encouraging people I work with to share with one another, to pray together, to smudge together. So yes, I think all is well. All will be well. Who has been taking care of me basically is the people that I have worked with are phoning me, are texting me. My children are going on FaceTime with me. Like, I live in Calgary and they live in BC. We all, on birthdays, Easter, Mother's Day, we all can speak with each other and see each other. So they check up in on me, I check in on them. And, you know, and I do really appreciate my colleagues that are, you know, phoning me. Do you need anything? You know? Yeah. So I do it's because sometimes, again, like, loneliness could kick in, like, for a moment. But when somebody calls and we go on the Zoom, on meetings and stuff, oh, I get so excited. Oh, I love this technology. And that's how I maintain my my well-being. Again, it's I know and I believe that I am being well looked after, and I really do appreciate that. During the time of this COVID-19 also brings me wonderful memories, because it's so silent out there.
right now, not so much now, but I mean, like just before a few weeks ago or last week, I can live with it. Hotia. And the reason is because when we lived yanda, way up north, where we lived with way out in the Hatue to Tue, and that's my far north where I was raised. You could hear the wind. You could hear the birds because we're in total isolation. You know, you can just hear all the wonderful sounds that Mother Earth gives us. The rain, the thunder, you know. So again, with being isolated like now, I can live with it again because I have been, and I've walked that path already. So I can take what is happening right now. Ceremonies again comes in, how that helps me also is that, again, with the technology, it's all on YouTube, it's all on the internet, and, you know, I'm able to hear the drumming. So with that technology, again, that just kind of keeps me still because I still could, you know, it's not live, but I know I could hear that. And you know what? Seriously, with this COVID-19, my son and I, because, you know, at 7 o'clock every evening, you know, they get rattled out there. And we take the drum and we go out on the balcony and we just drum like crazy, supporting the frontline workers, you know, and so that's how we participate in supporting the frontline workers out there. We have our own little ceremony here, you know, with my son and my children, whoever's around actually. We all sit in a circle, we smudge, we pray, and we drum together. And with my granddaughter, don't forget, she's only 5-year-old, Olivia. She's just right in there too, singing with us. And it feels so right, it feels so good to have the ceremony together. And every day, and speaking about ceremony, before somebody calls or when we're in that virtual Zoom, we all smudge together. And if I'm asked to do a leading prayer, I do, and I do appreciate them asking me just to pray before we share in our circle. Yeah.
That's great. So that is such a beautiful background, Violet. So obviously it's amazingly beautiful up north, even just the lake behind you in your image now. And I also know how amazing it's been in terms of talking about your connection to the land. So I will turn it back to you to continue on with that conversation. Thank you for sharing that video with us.
What I could probably say in regards to our transportation that way back then was that people either traveled by horse and buggy or by hold on, I'm just or by dog sled. And so the people up north, when they were out on their trap line, often used the dog sleds from one camp to another. People were spread out quite a bit up there, so the most of the travel was done at night. And one of the stories that I was told of my father, he actually lived quite a ways from my now brother-in-law. And what my brother-in-law would say was that he would hear in the middle of the night, he would hear the sound of the snowshoes being hit together, and he would always know that there was someone coming to visit. And so he said, I never knew, like, as he was a young fellow at the time, and said that he never knew how, like, people were able to navigate their way through the forests. Like Vi had mentioned, it was, you know, a very thick boreal forest. And they were able to still manage to go from one person's camp to another. And they if they didn't go by dog sled, then they were on snowshoes. And I do recall my father making his own snowshoes and repairing them, as well as nets. So they knew how to make nets, and they would repair their nets before they were out fishing as well. So it was a lot of things that, well, they couldn't really go to a store and go and buy, so they had to figure out ways in order to accommodate whatever situation they were in. And I don't know if can you tell the story about the time when you were a young child and got very ill?
Oh, okay. Um, I do recall it was very, very cold, lots of snow in the cabin, and I may have been about 4 year old. Um, the grandmothers were gathered around with my mother and they were crying and crying and crying. Um, I guess I had pneumonia, and there was no near, miles and miles and miles away from the nearest hospital. So what my dad did was, I remember it was very, very dark, probably around midnight. My dad hitched up the dog team, okay? And they put me on a sled, dog team, my mother sitting in behind me on this sled. And I could hear my dad saying, "Atlohe jiusa, nil'i, atlohe jiusa." And my mother would put her hand on my mouth, meaning my dad would say, "Check to see if she's breathing. Is she still breathing?" And my mom would say, "Yes." And I could feel the sled going very, very fast with the dog team. And it just, I was in and out, very, very cold. And we traveled all night on the dog team until dusk. It was morning. It was starting to lighten up. And we got to the hospital on a dog team. I do recall my mother disappeared, and I screamed and screamed and screamed, and I was in a crib. It seems like the crib was with iron but it made a lot of, like, I was kicking and kicking and kicking. I was disturbing the wards, so they put me in a different ward by myself so that I wouldn't disturb the others. Days later, I do remember my mother came, and oh, I was the happiest. She brought me a brand new beaded moccasins. Oh, they were beautifully all beaded. What a gift. But like I say, because of the lack of transportation, like no cars or no planes or no emergency helicopter, there was no such a thing. So my parents did what was best. The best for me to get to the hospital was with on a team, on a dog team. And I seem to have survived all that. I'm still here.
That is amazing. We seem to have lost Connie for one brief moment, Violet. So, on you're talking about the trap line, and
Yes.
in your video, and how connected you were to the land, and how you learned from your grandmother how to use traps. What do you think as we look at like right now, our current world? And I know if I had to survive on a trap line and I didn't have Safeway providing my food, I'd be in big trouble. So what kind of learnings do you think that actually gives to us?
Do you know, it's really, really important for the youths
Yeah.
to learn survival skills. I learned by not by book or anything. It was visual. I watched my dad, how he hitched up horses on a wagon and he got firewood. My mother hauled in water with a humongous barrel, not barrel, it is a tub over the stove. First of all, she did that to wash clothes. And that was our bathtub also. There was 4 of us children in the same bathtub, warmed up. I was the second one. My poor youngest brother was the youngest one, so he got bathed the last. In the cold winter, that tub was put over the stove again, and we had flour sacks that we'd fill out outside with snow and haul in to melt. But that snow, like it was forever. But it's one of the chores I had to do was to haul in on a huge sack, bringing in that snow and putting it in a tub to warm it up. Yeah, it was, and so, like I say, coming back to how of what is happening. Like Janet, I heard you say, like, you know how we depend on, Safeway, the electricity, this modern technology, even what we're doing now. Basically, because of my lifestyle, my early lifestyle, if everything shut down, grocery store, everything shut down here in Calgary, my survival skills would kick in immediately. I would go on the nearest Tsutsina Reserve, Kananaskis, wherever, a shelter, build that shelter in a hurry, and then try to look for food. Try to get near the water, need to drink water. So for me, my survival skills of how I was raised, way, way, way out in the deep forest, northern Alberta, yes, I can survive. So just so the youths know, it's really important if you have the opportunity to learn to go out and to survive, how to survive. Go with the elders and people that are knowledgeable. Look with your own eyes, and help and ask questions. But it's, to me, I've learned by my visual, what I watched my grandmother do, how I went to help her check the snares, the rabbit snares, what she did with the rabbit fur, how she cooked it. You know what? I can do that now. And as we speak, right now, from Cold Lake, outside, wow, I mean, I wish it was open over an open fire, but in my electrical crock pot, I got some fresh fish happening right now. Isn't that cool? But back in the day, like you're asking Janet, it was over open fire, you know. Yeah.
That
Hey.
that's amazing. You're making me hungry just talking about. I'm originally from the north too, from Fort McMurray, and so I really appreciate that, like how you talked about the snow and the power of using the environment that you're in. And so, Connie, I see that you're back. So I have a question for you then
Sure.
about language. Because another thing that we had to talk about was how the language comes from the land and where you're from. And there's a different sound even from those who are speaking in the north. And so how, I know within your community you're working yourself very hard with the youth in terms of that revitalization of the language. And so why is that important? And what does that look like in terms of a community in the north?
Well, first of all, to talk about language, I have been working on language revitalization. And what I do is I work with preschool children. And in the last 2-3 years, we have been building a program to be able to teach our 4 and 5-year-olds how to converse in our language. And we have used a few of teaching them. And one of the things that we have discovered in teaching them was that they learn very quickly through song. And of course, we didn't have, we don't have like jingles, if you want to call it, or those kind of catchy sounds or sing songs in our language. So what we did was we started to work on creating songs using the sound, the songs like we created a song and we used the tune of Here We Go Around the Mulberry Bush, because the kids hear that part, right? They hear that Here We Go Around the Mulberry Bush, blah, blah, blah. And so what we did was we turned it into using our Dene words, and we taught them the song that we created called Mo. He's a mouse and he visits the kids. But there's a language program coming out of BC that uses this method of this mouse, and he teaches the kids different sounds and stuff like that. So we use that kind of basis to be able to teach them. And what we found was in the beginning, they were, like they could kind of sound out certain things, but at 4 and 5-year-old, some of the kids, they don't speak very well. And what we found by introducing them into our language was that it actually ended up speeding up their ability to actually speak English as well as Dene. So that was a really positive outcome. Unfortunately, we only really got going in this past year, like the 2019 school year, and then we were cut short because we ended in March. So we didn't really get to see exactly how far we could get with them, but we definitely seen a huge difference in their ability to enunciate sounds that are not in the English vocabulary. So we're still working on that. And what I wanted to also say about our Indigenous languages is that our Indigenous languages really are very descriptive. So when we say a word, it really has a lot more meaning than for example, the words, like if you were to say, talk about the weather, but in our language, it might be tell you a lot more, like, whether it's a wet snow or, dry or things like that. So that's one of the things. And not only that, but also in our language is in regards to our kinship system. So in the Western way of identifying your immediate family members, for example, you would use terminology like your father, mother, brother, sister, grandmother, grandfather. And however, in our traditional language, we also use the terms we have for cousins, or what we would call cross relations, and also that in the way the kinship system is set up is that same-sex relative, like our same-sex sister, or if you're a male, your brother, your children would refer to you as basically like my little father, or my mother. And in our case with Vi and I, her mom and I, our mothers are, so her Vi's grandmother and my mom were sisters, and so she refers to me as in the same kind of role as she would her own mom. And I would refer to her like my daughter, even though she's a lot older than me. And so you could imagine how this caused a lot of, could be very confusing to and that kind of system when they encountered school, because they would have been referring to these cousins, for example, as brother and sister. Meanwhile, the nuns and priests would have known that that's not their actual brother or sister. And also when child welfare came about and children were being removed, and they were maybe even asked, like, who's your brother and sister? Well, they couldn't really answer that because they might have had several brothers and sisters. So your language tells us a lot about how the social structure was, as well as in terms of the description. You could almost visualize if someone was to give you directions to a certain place, you could almost visualize how to get there with just words. I was gonna also mention was in terms of I was telling the story about my father who would go to meet with my brother-in-law and his family, was that they actually navigated their way by using the stars. And so they were able to go, to wherever they were going to be going, using that, knowledge of the stars. And we were saying how over the years now, the location of these seen then is not the same as it is today. It's a lot about how, everything has evolved. And they used a lot of landmarks. And so if they didn't have GPS or nothing like that. So they had to find other, methods of navigating. And so they, very, so these are some of the richness of our culture that sometimes young people, they don't really understand, that we had our ways of being able to survive, especially in the climates that we did as well, and in the areas that we were in. So I hope that, some youth get a chance to be able to get out on the land with elders and, learn about these things, because within that environment, you would learn a lot about how to survive. So I just wish that for all the youth, for sure.
That was beautiful. So I do love that point, and it's what is coming to the end, but your point, and I'll give Violet a chance to talk, but how complex the language was. And I get our language, we probably think our language is complex, but I think how it's connected to societal structure and landmarks and the stars and the cosmos, and how then being forced into that residential school system, how all of that was misunderstood, and then how it totally uprooted the culture, and how important bringing that language piece back really is about almost bringing the spirit of the soul of the people back, because that is so how tied they were. And I think that was really beautiful, Connie. So thank you so much for sharing that.
That is one of my sisters is a linguist, and she, in analyzing our language, our Dene language, what was discovered was we actually have 26 vowels in our language. So you can imagine, you know, we're talking about the complexity between that and English, where you only have, you know, what is it, 5 and a Y kind of thing. And so it, you know, our, you know, children and whoever understood the language and can speak it, I understand most of it, but there's some areas where it's almost like at different levels, like you learn the language that are more complex as you get older. And, you know, some of the things I will talk to me about, I can pick up some of it, but some of it I don't really know the exact specifics. She might be able to add to that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And there's a note saying that someone had to head out, but it's Marissa, and she just thanks you. She's very grateful for your stories and your teachings and the blessing. And we all are, because I think just learning more about the complex societies that were in the North, I think is so key to us as a province. And I think there needs to be more stories about that and more sharing. And so, Violet, I will give you the last word as we continue. And again, so everybody who's here, we are going to get I'll get the video from Connie. This webinar will be posted, so you could share it out and come revisit bits as well. So that's going to be happening the next few days. And so Violet, I just invite you to, you know, is there any last things that you want to share with those who are on the webinar now and those who will view it in the future?
Yes. Well, first of all, I just wish you could all see my face now, but, you know, I'll work on it after. Yeah, you know, like when you say language, I'm just so very, very grateful that I can actually go home and speak Dene with my relatives. And what Connie had said earlier, there are some words that are meaningless in English, and they are so powerful in Dene Suline. Dene Suline is who I am. Like, for instance, I was just thinking of, when you say porridge, porridge, you know what you eat in the morning. And in our language, you say abihechezi, meaning you boil it in the morning. See what I mean? Porridge is abiches. You boil it in the morning. How to interpret that, you know, it's kind of cool. Yeah. So I'm just glad you are all here, and you know, yeah, I'm just happy to be in the sunshine of Calgary. It's raining and raining back home.
Well, oh, go on, Connie.
It's actually out right now. Popped its head out.
Nice. Well, thank you both for sharing these, your teachings, and for your thoughts. And again, I think as ARPA, so Alberta Recreation Park Association, we're a provincial organization. So it's always great hearing from and seeing diverse faces and stories as we all kind of move forward together, especially in this time when COVID is causing distress and causing us to think about where we come from and what the future can hold. So I enjoyed today. It was such an honor and a blessing. And I thank you all for coming. And I hope those who watch this webinar later enjoy it. So thank you so much, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day.